Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Rivas. I'm the product manager at WIN-911. Thanks for joining us this morning for a quick webinar on our latest release. We're now on 2021 R6. This will be one of the quicker webinars we've done. R6 was a relatively small release compared to what we normally do. And we'll go ahead and get started. There are basically two things that we added. Well, there's really just one thing we added, which is the status module. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And then there's some Windows and mobile updates that we made that I'll talk about at the end. And there's also one little thing that we did with the dispatcher that I don't have on the agenda here that I'll talk about as well. So the status module is a new module that we created that's going to give you some insight into the status of your Win-911 system and whether it is essentially working correctly or not, or if there's some kind of issues with the system, warnings and whatnot. You can see a little screenshot of the system at the bottom. So you can see you've got all the different modules at the top. And then you've got a little grid at the bottom with a little bit more information about what is going on with the system. And just one second here. Of course, there we go. So there's three different status states a module can be assigned. Green is the optimal state where the module is functioning as expected. Yellow is a warning state where there may be some issues, but the module is still considered operational. And red is a failure state, which means the module is not working and some action may be needed to get the module working again. So you can see some examples in the screenshot. You can see most of these modules are in the green state. Here is the mobile module is in the yellow state. If we go to it, we'll see that it says no mobile gateway is configured. So maybe that's you've installed it and you don't plan on using mobile. So that's going to be a warning state. And then you've got a few that are red where I've got a gateway configured, but it's not actually connecting to that particular gateway. A gateway would be a modem in this case. So I've got a modem configured, it's not actually working, and so you can see it's in a failed state. So there are three basic states that individual modules can be in, and in addition to that, there are, come on, I'm having a hard time with PowerPoint today. There are several different categories that the status messages can be grouped into. A configuration category is going to indicate that a critical attribute of the module hasn't yet been configured. So in the case of something like a data source, it could mean that there's no application has been configured. It could be that you do have an application configured, but you don't have at least one subscription or a tag created, so it's not going to actually work. In the case of notifiers, you got to have a gateway configured for Win-911 to function properly. That's why you saw that warning about mobile not having a gateway. So that's a configuration problem. And also, if you have a notifier, let's say you have an email configured, you've got a gateway configured, but you don't have any email connections configured, then you'd get a configuration warning about that saying, hey, you've got email set up, but there's no email connection set up for it. So how could it send any email notification? So it's going to give you a configuration warning about that. There are also license warnings. So the license category is going to tell you that there's a problem with your Win-911 license for an individual module, or it could be, usually it's going to affect all modules at once, but there are some that can affect individual modules. So it could be something as simple as the demo license has expired, or we are now doing subscription licensing in the future. That could mean that your subscription licensing has expired. It could also just indicate that you don't have a license for a particular feature you have configured. For example, if you have advanced features that you configured while you were in the demo period, and then you activated an interactive license, then that's not going to work. It will warn you and saying, hey, you have some stuff that's configured that you're not allowed to have. And it could just mean that your licensing server, the code meter application, isn't running and it's not able to get a license at all. Next one is SQL or SQL. This will indicate to you that there is a problem with WIN-911 establishing a connection to a SQL server, your SQL instance, where all your configuration information is stored. So that, I mean, obviously if you can't talk to SQL, that's a big problem. So that'll help you troubleshoot a problem if your module isn't working, if your WIN-911 system not working is expected. You can go to this status screen. It will tell you, hey, this particular module is not able to connect to a SQL server. And then last is connectivity. And connectivity is really about the WIN-911 module's ability to communicate with other WIN-911 modules. So, for example, the dispatcher module needs to communicate with all the other data sources and notifiers within the system. The notifiers need to be able to communicate with the dispatcher. Reporting module needs to communicate with the data sources and the notifiers, and so on and so on. So if these modules can't communicate with each other, that error will be reflected in the status module, and you'll be able to pinpoint the problem to the particular module. Maybe it's a single module, maybe it's all the modules, but the status module should help you figure out those particular issues. And getting to the last bit of it here, because the status module as it's implemented right now it's a passive workspace, meaning to glean any information or insights into your system, you have to go look at it, and that's just the current iteration of it. We plan to add additional functionality to it. For example, you'll notice that there's this section over here called failover condition met, which right now it doesn't really mean anything because there's no failover module. So what we're planning on doing in the future in our next release, which will come in Q1 of next year, is release a failover module that will communicate with the status module, and it'll be able to determine based on what the status module is telling it when there's a failover condition. And those failover conditions are configured within the status module right now. Well, not technically failover conditions, but failure conditions. So when you can tell WIN-911 what you think is a failure condition for a particular module. And then in the future, this failover module will be able to communicate with the status module, and it'll say, when this has failed, go ahead and fail over to an additional WIN-911 system. So what the failover conditions as they are right now is you can say, for all the modules, if it hasn't been reachable for some amount of time, then that means that you can consider those modules to be in a failed state. We've added this option for include reporting module because technically the reporting module isn't required for notifications to go out. So if you don't care about the reporting module, you could uncheck that box and it won't put it in a failure state as well. There's the alarm sources. We've got this option for a watchdog being named status, that if it's been active for a certain amount of time, that means that particular data source module is in a failed state. So that way, let's say you're using factory talk alarm events, you create a watchdog named status. When that status watchdog gets activated, you know that that particular data source is in a failed state, and you can have this failover module that doesn't exist yet, but will exist in the future. It knows that it's failed and it can fail over to another system. Also, if the alarm source just can't communicate with the dispatcher, you can say how many attempts that it takes, failed attempts that it takes for it to be in a failed state. And then, for notifiers, you've got the different notifier types. So if it's how many email failures in a row, consecutive email failures would constitute a failure. So you've got you got email, mobile, SMS, invoice. So you can configure all of those. It's defaulted to 5. If that's too many and you want to lower it down, you certainly can, or if you want to increase that number, you can do that as well. And then the dispatcher itself just has this option for consecutive attempts to reach a notifier. So when an alarm goes off, it goes to the dispatcher, and then the dispatcher goes to send it to a notifier. If the dispatcher tries to deliver a an alarm to a notifier and it fails 5 different times in a row, then that will be a failover in a condition, so it'll put the dispatcher in a failed state. So that's, I mean, the gist of what the status module is right now. Let's see, I got a question here. Okay, just want to make sure it wasn't. I'll get to the questions at the end. I just want to make sure you guys could hear me. So that's the gist of what it's doing right now. And we'll add more functionality in the next release and continue to do so in the future. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick was about WIN-911 Mobile. We released a newsletter or an email memo, I don't whatever you want to call it, a while ago, about a week or two ago, saying that on December 7th, you may have a disruption to your WIN-911 Mobile system. There's 2 ways to resolve it. One is to just restart your WIN-911 Mobile runtime on your own, and the other preferred option is to upgrade to 2021 R6. And that's because there's some reconnection logic that had to be changed for it to stay connected with our Azure system. And if you don't want to have it to keep restarting it every 3 months or so, then you will need to upgrade to the latest version of WIN-911, which again is R6. We released it on the 15th, I believe, November 15th. So it's been out for a little bit. So that's all you need to do to fix it. Otherwise, you'll need to restart the runtime. So force a reconnect for that. And the other last feature change that we added for this release was a callout list block. So in a workflow, if you ever use workflows and advanced notification policies, you've probably noticed it's kind of a pain to drop individual notification blocks into a workflow. So we added a new feature for callout lists. So instead of adding in individual people into the list, you can just drop a callout list in and add all your people to that callout list, and then it's much easier to build out a workflow this way rather than going one by one by one. So it just looks like a normal callout list. I don't have a screenshot of what that actually looks like, but if you edit this callout list here, it'll just open up a normal callout list where you add individual people in with their delays and so on and so on. So that was added in the R6 release as well. And that's pretty much it for this release. If you want to download it, you can go grab it off our website right now. Again, it was released on the 15th. If you have any other feature requests that you want to let us know about, the feature request board is still up and available. So that's where we're going to pick out some individual features that we're implementing. So if you have ideas that you'd like to see implemented in WIN-911, please go there and let us know about it.